Nicole Kidman has always looked untouchable, a porcelain goddess gliding through Hollywood like she was carved out of moonlight. But the truth hiding behind her most private photos tells a story that no red carpet camera ever dared to show. And once you see these images, you will never look at her the same way again. Because behind every glamorous pose, behind every perfect magazine cover, and every carefully rehearsed smile, there are raw, unfiltered moments that reveal a woman who has battled heartbreak, betrayal, hidden grief, and a loneliness so sharp it cuts through even her brightest triumphs. These are not the public photos you've seen 1,000 times. These are the frames no one was ever supposed to analyze. The candid backstage snapshots, the whispered hotel corridor pictures, the tears smudged under makeup, the exhaustion tucked behind designer gowns, and the rare early career shots that expose a young Nicole fighting demons before the world even learned her name. And tonight, we're pulling all of it into the light, because Nicole Kidman's life isn't just a Hollywood success story. It's a maze of quiet tragedies, buried scandals, shocking career gambles, secret heartbreaks, and emotional scars she hid so well that even her closest fans never noticed. But in these private photos, the ones the world ignored, dismissed, or never had the chance to see, the mask finally cracks. Stay with me, because the final picture we uncover at the end of this video doesn't just expose a hidden chapter of her life. It completely rewrites the narrative Hollywood spent decades trying to control. And once you witness it, you'll understand why Nicole Kidman's untold story is not just surprising, it's absolutely devastating. Long before the world knew her as Hollywood's frost-kissed queen, Nicole Kidman was a quiet, observant child caught between two worlds, born unexpectedly in Honolulu while her parents were far from home, then swept back to Australia, where a stricter, more disciplined life reshaped her entire identity. That early displacement left a subtle fracture inside her, a sense of never fully belonging anywhere. And when you look at the earliest private photos from her childhood, you can almost read that restlessness in her posture. One shows her standing barefoot in a sun-drenched backyard, hair wild, hands clasped like she's bracing for some invisible storm. And even though she's barely school age, there's something startlingly adult about her eyes. Her father, a respected psychologist and academic, and her mother, a nurse and feminist activist, created a home overflowing with expectations, curious minds, organized routines, and an environment that rewarded achievement over emotion. That atmosphere may have shaped her resilience, but the pressure seeped into her young bones in ways that wouldn't fully surface until years later. Then came the emotional earthquake that changed everything: her mother's breast cancer diagnosis. While other teenagers were rebelling or dreaming about dances, Nicole dropped out of school to help care for her, stepping into responsibility so heavy it carved a permanent seriousness into her personality. In a rare family snapshot from that period, she's sitting beside her mother on a faded couch, hands gently clasped, shoulders tense, doing everything she can to appear strong. And that single picture captures the origin of the Nicole Kidman the public would later worship, a girl who learned too young that survival requires composure. This section of her life isn't glamorous, but it's the foundation of every role she ever played, every mask she perfected, and every sacrifice she made. And as we move forward, the photos only grow more revealing, because the next chapter shows how that quiet Australian girl transformed into someone Hollywood couldn't ignore. Before Nicole Kidman became the ethereal force dominating international cinema, she was a hungry, laser-focused teenager sprinting through Australia's modest entertainment scene like someone who already sensed that obscurity was a threat she could never afford to tolerate. Her early photos from this era don't show a starlet basking in attention. They show a young woman who looked like she was studying every corner of the room, memorizing people, absorbing energy, calculating the fastest path out of the ordinary. One of those rare teen snapshots taken on the set of a tiny local production shows her sitting cross-legged on the floor with a script balanced on her knees, eyes burning with determination, while the other kids laugh behind her, completely unaware that this girl would soon outrun all of them. When she landed her first TV roles, she approached them like battlefields, immersing herself in characters with a seriousness that startled directors twice her age. The Australian industry wasn't glamorous then: long hours, tiny budgets, humid shooting days, and cramped dressing rooms. But Nicole treated every frame like a chance to carve her name into something bigger. Crew members remembered how she barely went home, choosing to sleep in trailers, eating whatever was available, and practicing lines until her voice cracked. In private, behind-the-scenes photos from those early productions, you can see a different Nicole emerging: hair tied back, face shiny with sweat, wardrobe stitched together from thrift stores, and an intensity that feels almost feral, as if she understood that mediocrity was the true enemy. Casting agents noticed the glow first, then the discipline, and then the unsettling ability she had to transform even the simplest material into something magnetic. She wasn't polished yet, but she was unmistakably dangerous, the kind of raw talent producers whispered about after hours. And this was only the beginning. because the next photographs capture the moment her life detonated into global fame, her first Hollywood breakthrough, and the arrival of someone who would change not only her career, but her entire emotional trajectory. When Nicole Kidman stepped onto the set of Days of Thunder, she was still the rising Australian export, trying to carve a place in an industry that swallowed newcomers whole. But the moment she crossed paths with Tom Cruise, her life jolted into a trajectory no agent, no studio, and certainly no tabloid could have predicted. Their chemistry wasn't the soft movie romance kind. It was sharp, electric, almost volatile, the sort of connection that people in the room felt before either of them admitted it. In the private, unedited photos taken during those first weeks of filming, you can see a different Nicole than the driven teen from earlier sections. Her expression softer, her guard lowered, her focus partially pulled away from the script and toward the man who already lived under a media microscope. Hollywood immediately smelled a headline, and suddenly Nicole, once the outsider, was thrust into a spotlight she wasn't prepared for. The relationship accelerated at a pace that felt less like love and more like an unstoppable force, and by Christmas 1990, the whirlwind had spun into a full marriage ceremony in Telluride, surrounded by security, secrecy, and a press corps buzzing like a hive waiting to strike. Early marriage photos show two breathtakingly beautiful people wrapped in winter coats, cheeks flushed from cold and adrenaline, smiling like they were building something no one could touch. But fame always extracts a price, and in the unseen snapshots from their early years together, you can trace the first cracks, the exhaustion from constant travel, the strain of living inside global speculation, the weight of becoming a packaged power couple rather than two actors figuring out adulthood. Still, they tried to create a family, adopting Isabella and later Connor, forming tender private bonds far from the cameras. And yet, as we move into the next chapter, the images become heavier, more fragile, and far more revealing, because behind that fairy tale exterior was a heartbreak that would define the darkest part of Nicole's life and change her forever. Behind the glossy images of Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise posing at premieres, smiling like they were living inside a perfect, unbreakable Hollywood fairy tale, there existed a quieter, far more devastating chapter that the cameras never captured. A chapter defined not by fame, but by a heartbreak so heavy it rewired the way Nicole moved through the world. Long before their marriage began to crumble, Nicole silently endured something she rarely spoke about publicly: the agony of an ectopic pregnancy early in their relationship, a medical emergency that left her both physically shaken and emotionally hollow. Later, near the end of the marriage, she faced another pregnancy loss, a sorrow reported only in fragments because Nicole, always protective of her interior world, held the grief like a locked box she refused to open for anyone. When you look at the private photos from this period, the ones taken on quiet nights at home or during rare unguarded moments in hotel hallways, there's a heaviness clinging to her posture, a softness in her eyes that isn't romantic but broken, as if she was trying to steady herself against an invisible weight. In one rarely seen snapshot from a backstage dressing room, she sits alone, wrapped in a robe, hands clasped at her stomach, expression distant, not angry, not crying, but emptied in a way only someone who has loved and lost can understand. The world saw an A-list couple traveling the globe, but in the private frames, Nicole looks like a woman standing in two realities: the public one she was paid to perform, and the private one she was barely surviving. Those losses didn't just wound her, they changed the tone of her marriage, the rhythm of her choices, and the intensity of her ambition. And as we slide into the next section, the photos take on an eerier, more brittle quality, because the years that followed brought Nicole her greatest professional triumphs, but also the coldest loneliness she ever faced. The world remembers the night Nicole Kidman stepped onto the Academy Awards stage bathed in gold light, her posture regal, her voice steady, her presence almost supernatural. But what the public never realized is that the triumph everyone celebrated was happening at a moment when she felt more alone, more emotionally untethered, and more unsure of herself than ever before. This was the post-divorce era, the period when Nicole was rebuilding from the inside out, trying to stitch together a life after the foundation she trusted had already collapsed, and the pressure to prove she could stand without anyone beside her became its own relentless, suffocating burden. Look closely at the behind-the-scenes photos from this chapter, not the glamorous red carpet shots, but the candid, unfiltered images taken backstage when the makeup is fading and the adrenaline is wearing thin. One shows her clutching the Oscar with both hands, not triumphantly, but almost protectively, as if she were holding onto a lifeline rather than an achievement. Another captures her in a quiet corner, head slightly bowed, a faint smudge of mascara beneath one eye. The chaos of celebration surrounding surrounding her, while she looks strangely disconnected, caught between gratitude and an unmistakable ache. The tabloids ran headlines about her rise from heartbreak, but in private photos, she doesn't look victorious. She looks like someone trying to believe that success can fill the hollow spaces life carved into her. The industry adored her, critics praised her, directors lined up for her next film. Yet the real Nicole, the woman in those quiet, half-lit photos, seemed almost displaced, searching for something solid to anchor herself to. And it's in this emotional limbo that the next phase of her life begins, because just when it seemed her world might freeze in this elegant loneliness forever, an unexpected love story and a new family chapter emerged, reshaping every photograph that would come after. Just when it seemed like Nicole Kidman might drift forever inside that elegant, unreachable loneliness, fate delivered a plot twist even Hollywood couldn't have scripted: a chance encounter at a Los Angeles event where she met country music star Keith Urban, a man whose quiet intensity and grounded warmth formed the complete opposite of everything she had lived through in her previous high-profile marriage. In the private photos from their earliest days together, there is a noticeable shift in Nicole's entire aura. Her shoulders sit lower, her smile softens, and the guarded distance that once defined her presence begins to melt into something surprisingly vulnerable and unpolished. One intimate picture taken on a dusty Nashville porch shows her barefoot, leaning into Keith as he tunes a guitar, both of them lit only by a fading sunset, a moment that feels impossibly normal, almost like Nicole had stepped out of her own celebrity myth for the first time in decades. Their relationship wasn't the smooth, romantic fantasy magazines later portrayed. Keith publicly battled addiction, rehab stays added pressure to their new marriage, and Nicole learned how to love someone who needed patience instead of perfection. Yet those struggles knitted them together rather than breaking them apart. And in the snapshots from those years, you see a Nicole who is no longer trying to impress anyone. She's simply trying to stay present. The arrival of their daughters, Sunday and Faith, further reshaped her identity, turning the formerly haunted expressions in private photos into something softer, brighter, almost relieved. There's a rare candid shot from a quiet family morning where Nicole, hair messy and wearing oversized pajamas, is laughing uncontrollably as Keith lifts one of the girls into the air, a moment so ordinary and unfiltered that it feels like the antidote to the emptiness she once lived with. This chapter shows Nicole not as the porcelain icon the world worships, but as a woman rediscovering joy in small, imperfect moments. And the next set of photos we uncover will reveal how this new life transformed her public persona into something far more mysterious, powerful, and fiercely controlled than ever before. Today, Nicole Kidman moves through the world with a kind of serene, almost imperious composure, the quiet confidence of a woman who has survived enough storms to no longer flinch at thunder. But the photos from her recent years reveal something far more layered than the polished elegance she presents on red carpets. In the carefully curated public images, she appears ageless, graceful, untouchable, yet the private snapshots tell a different, far more intriguing story. A woman who has built a fortress around her peace, who chooses silence over spectacle, and who has become almost surgical about what the public is allowed to see. One private photo taken during a quiet walk in Sydney shows her bundled in a loose coat, hair tucked under a cap, eyes focused straight ahead with a look that isn't sad or stressed, it's simply distant, as though she has learned to protect the softest parts of herself with an emotional force field. Another candid image, snapped during a late-night break on a film set, captures her sitting alone in a folding chair, script resting on her knees, but instead of tension, there's a strange calm in her posture, as if she finally understands that her power comes not from being everywhere, but from choosing where she invests her energy. Even in glamorous editorial shoots, there's a subtle shift. The once vulnerable expressions have hardened into something more enigmatic, a Mona Lisa-like restraint that hints at private battles she no longer needs to explain to anyone. The most revealing photo, though, is a simple one. Nicole standing barefoot in her Tennessee backyard at dawn, wrapped in a cardigan, staring at the horizon while the sky glows behind her. There is no makeup, no wardrobe, no persona, just a woman who has learned how to rebuild, reinvent, and reclaim herself piece by piece. And as we reach the end of her journey, these final images don't just show who Nicole Kidman has become. They prove she mastered the art of controlling her narrative in a world determined to tell her story for her. As Nicole Kidman stands today at the peak of her legacy, with awards stacked like armor and a career that spans continents, genres, and decades, there's a hidden cost woven through the quieter, less glamorous images that never make it to magazine covers. The private price she continues to pay for living a life endlessly dissected, judged, and claimed by the world. In her latest unseen photos, the ones taken by crew members, neighbors, or friends who never intended them for public consumption, you can trace the emotional echoes of everything she has survived. The fractured beginnings, the explosive Hollywood marriage, the secret losses, the reinvention, and the carefully protected family she built as both refuge and rebellion. One candid snapshot shows her sitting at the edge of a dimly lit trailer during a late-night shoot, not exhausted or sad, but contemplative, staring at a cup of tea, her shoulders curled inward as though she's momentarily forgotten the cameras, the expectations, the endless scrutiny. Another picture, taken during a quiet lunch on a balcony in Italy, captures her gazing at the distant street below, with an expression that's both wistful and oddly wary, as if she knows the world still wants a piece of her no matter how carefully she guards her boundaries. And then there's the photo only a handful of people have ever seen, a nearly shadowed image snapped in a rehearsal studio, where she stands alone in front of a mirror, hair pulled back, no makeup, posture straight, eyes fixed on her own reflection with a mix of gratitude, sorrow, and a strange unbreakable resolve. In that single frame, all the noise of her life dissolves, and what remains is the truth. Nicole Kidman is not the porcelain icon Hollywood crafted. She is a survivor who learned to turn heartbreak into fuel, reinvention into strategy, and silence into one of the most powerful weapons a woman in her position can wield. And as this final image settles, it becomes clear why her story still captivates millions, because even after all the triumphs and tragedies, she remains a mystery wrapped in stardust, holding just enough back to keep the world wanting more. And now, as we close the final chapter of Nicole Kidman's hidden journey, these private photos linger like soft echoes, reminding us that behind every flawless premiere shot and every meticulously crafted public moment, there is a woman who has endured, evolved, and reclaimed her story on her own terms. What makes her legend endure isn't just the fame or the awards, it's the quiet, untold resilience hidden in those rare frames we've uncovered tonight, the ones that reveal her humanity in ways the spotlight never could. If there's one truth these images expose, it's that Nicole's life has never been defined by the roles she played, but by the silent battles she fought when no one was watching. And if this deep dive into her most guarded moments left you wanting more, if you love discovering the secret lives behind iconic faces, peeling back the layers of mystery, heartbreak, and triumph, then don't step away yet, because there's another story waiting that's just as haunting, just as intimate, and just as impossible to forget. After this video, make sure you binge watch our previous upload, the one about Debbie Harry most private photos you must see, an untold story, where we unravel another legend's secret life with the same raw, unfiltered intensity you experienced here. Trust me, if tonight shook you, that one will pull you even deeper into the world behind fame's velvet curtain. You're watching Vintage Spotlight, the channel where forgotten truths rise, hidden archives breathe again, and the icons you thought you knew finally reveal the parts they kept locked away. Hit subscribe, stay close, and prepare yourself, because our next story is already on its way, and it's one you won't want to miss.